They thought she was just another quiet girl. No friends, no voice, no one to back her up. So when Dylan, the school's loudest bully, chose her as his next target, no one expected her to push back. But what if the girl you try to humiliate is the one person who doesn't need to fight to win? Because in the next few days, everything Dylan used to control, his reputation, his influence, his silence, starts to slip. And it all begins with one question he never thought he'd have to ask. Why isn't she afraid of me? At Clearview High, hallway cruelty had become routine. It didn't make the news. No one gasped when a smaller kid got shoved into a locker or when a cruel nickname echoed down the stairs. Teachers passed by with half glances. Students pretended not to hear. And Dylan Hayes? He thrived in the silence. His confidence came not from being liked, but from being feared. So when Naomi Carter walked in, quiet, soft-spoken, clearly new, Dylan saw what he thought was another easy target. She wore no makeup, spoke only when spoken to, and sat in the back of the classroom like she was trying to fold herself into the wall. Her clothes were simple, and her hair was pulled back in the kind of braid that said she had other things on her mind. For Dylan, this was perfect. No one would defend her. No one even seemed to know her name. During English class, Dylan whispered something to make the row behind him laugh. Naomi didn't react. During lunch, he nudged her tray as he passed, spilling half her fruit. Still, she stayed quiet, but the silence wasn't submission. There was something else about the way she didn't respond, something he couldn't name. That afternoon, as the final bell rang and kids rushed toward the exits, Dylan made sure to stand right in Naomi's path. He didn't say a word, just stared with that same smug grin he always wore when he knew no one was watching, or no one dared to stop him. Naomi looked up for a moment, met his eyes, then walked around him without a word. The grin flickered for half a second. Outside, the school parking lot buzzed with students finding their rides. Dylan leaned against the wall with his crew, waiting to see if Naomi would catch the bus, maybe get one last jab in before the day ended. That's when a black Dodge Charger rolled up, engine humming low. The windows were tinted dark, the kind of car no one at Clearview drove. Then the door opened, and when Marcus Carter stepped out, tall, calm, unmistakably familiar, the entire group froze. Some recognized him from the big screen, others didn't need to. The way he carried himself was enough. He gave Naomi a quiet nod, opened the door, and she stepped in without a word. No one said anything. But in that moment, every student in the lot learned something Dylan hadn't yet. Naomi Carter wasn't here to fight. She was here to be seen when it mattered. What Dylan does next isn't clever, it isn't brave, and it certainly isn't the last mistake he'll make. The next morning, the whispers started before homeroom. Not loud, not obvious, just sharp enough to cut. Did you see that car? She's probably faking it. There's no way he's her real dad. Dylan didn't start the rumors, but he didn't stop them either. He didn't need to. He knew how these things worked. Doubt was a virus. It spread on its own. By third period, Naomi's name wasn't just known, it was debated. Some students pulled up clips of Marcus Carter on their phones, arguing whether it was really him. Others said she must have lied, that she somehow staged it. No one asked Naomi. They just speculated, poked, whispered. Dylan watched all of it with growing discomfort. He hadn't expected this. He wanted a reaction, tears, anger, something. What he got was silence. Again. After lunch, he made his move. Naomi was at her locker, placing her books gently on the top shelf like she always did. Her movements were careful, like she didn't want to disturb the air around her. Dylan strolled up with two of his friends, bumped into her hard enough to jostle the locker door, then laughed like it was all a joke. One of them muttered something crude under his breath. Another knocked over her water bottle. It rolled, hit the tile, and cracked. Still, Naomi said nothing. She just bent down, picked it up, and stood straight again. That's when Dylan leaned in, voice low. What's the game here? You think that car makes you special? Naomi looked at him. Not through him, not past him, at him. Her eyes didn't flash with anger. They didn't narrow in fear. They just stayed still, like she was waiting for him to realize something on his own. Pauline Grant, now 72, spent decades teaching kids who knew what it meant to be cornered. Watching that footage later, because it would eventually spread beyond the school, she said one thing. That girl didn't need to prove anything. She was letting him run out of rope. By the end of the day, the locker had been trashed, her books scattered, a torn notebook on the floor, but nothing about Naomi had changed. She picked up each item slowly, brushing off dust, placing them back with care. No complaints, no drama, just presence. And that's when something began to shift. Not in Dylan, but around him. A few students didn't laugh this time. A few walked away, small things, quiet things, but they mattered. Because when someone doesn't play your game, the game starts to feel ridiculous. Naomi closed her locker with both hands, then paused. Her reflection in the metal door was slightly warped, but clear enough. Behind her, Dylan stood frozen. Not because of fear, but confusion. For the first time, he didn't know what came next. The difference between control and chaos is paper thin, and Dylan had just started to feel it tear. That evening, the house was quiet. No television, no music. Just the distant hum of passing cars outside and the soft clink of dishes being washed in the sink. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, her homework open, but untouched. Her pencil rested still in her hand. She wasn't tired. She wasn't upset. She was thinking, turning over every moment in the hallway like pieces in a puzzle, trying to find the edge. Marcus Carter leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her. He had seen that look before. On set, they called it staying in character. But this wasn't acting. Naomi wasn't pretending. She was holding something inside, trying to figure out whether to release it or let it sharpen into resolve. He sat down across from her. No big speech, no forced wisdom, just a few words, low and even. "You handled yourself today. I saw the way you stayed grounded." She didn't respond right away. Then finally, without looking up, she said, "I didn't do anything." He nodded. "Exactly." There was a pause, not heavy, just real. Naomi lifted her eyes and asked, "Why does he keep coming after me?" Marcus didn't sugarcoat it. "Because people like that think quiet means weak. They're loud because they don't know how to be still. And they poke at others hoping to feel bigger." He let that sit a second, then added, "But bullies like him, when they realize their noise doesn't move you, they don't quit right away. They double down. You need to be ready." Naomi closed her notebook and exhaled through her nose. "I don't want to fight him." Marcus leaned in slightly. "Good. That's not the kind of fight you win anyway." His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "You don't need to push back. You need to let him keep stepping forward until he trips over himself." At the corner of the room, the kitchen light flickered once before steadying. Naomi looked toward it as if it had answered something. Then she nodded, not to him, to herself. Harold Green, now 69, said that conversation reminded him of when his own daughter stood her ground during basic training. "It's not about proving you're strong," he said. "It's about knowing you don't have to prove anything at all." Later that night, Naomi sat on her bed, the room lit only by the blue glow of her desk lamp. She opened her journal. Not to write about Dylan, but to draw. A matchstick figure, small, crooked, burning at both ends. Below it, she wrote just one sentence. "Some fires burn themselves out." Then she closed the book, turned off the light, and lay down with the quiet confidence of someone who knew tomorrow would come with noise. But she wouldn't be the one making it. The next morning, Naomi walked through the school gates with the same steady pace. No headphones. No phone in hand. Just her backpack slung over one shoulder and that same quiet look, focused but calm. The hallway buzzed with students rushing to beat the bell, but she didn't rush. She didn't have to. People moved around her, like she was part of the structure now. Like something had shifted, even if no one said it out loud. Dylan noticed. He leaned against the lockers with his usual crew, watching her. He thought maybe yesterday had gotten to her. Maybe today she'd snap, say something, crack. But Naomi walked past him like he was background noise. That silence again, the one he still didn't understand. It didn't feel like fear. It felt like she knew something he didn't. Between second and third period, Dylan saw his chance. Naomi was at her locker, same spot, same rhythm. Books organized, jacket folded inside, water bottle placed to the left. She moved like someone who didn't expect interruptions, but wasn't surprised by them either. Dylan walked up, made eye contact with one of his friends, and gave a small nod. In a flash, a sneaker stuck out as Naomi turned. Her foot caught, her balance faltered. Books fell. The hallway rippled with laughter. Not loud, not all at once, just the kind that stings more because it's quiet and close and deliberate. Naomi looked down at her books. One had a footprint on it. The corner of her notebook was torn. She knelt, picked each item up without speaking, her movements slow, careful, almost ritualistic. When she stood, Dylan was still there, arms crossed, waiting. He didn't say a word, but his smirk did. Naomi looked him in the eye, not for long, just long enough, and then turned back to her locker. She slid her notebook inside, adjusted one book by less than an inch, and closed the door. Maria Alvarez, 63, once said, "There's a kind of dignity that doesn't flinch. I saw it in patients who'd lost everything but never asked for pity." That girl, Naomi, she carried that same dignity. Like her silence wasn't an absence of feeling, but a refusal to give anyone the satisfaction of breaking her. That moment hung in the air long after the bell rang. A few students who had laughed now looked away. One of Dylan's own friends shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check his phone. The joke didn't land the way it used to. The room had changed, even if Dylan couldn't see it yet. As Naomi walked to class, her steps steady, someone whispered behind her. Something cruel, something small. She didn't turn. Instead, she pulled a pen from her bag and clicked it once. A small sound, a simple act. But in a hallway full of noise, it was the only thing that felt honest. In that moment, it became clear. Dylan hadn't knocked her down. He had exposed himself. And Naomi, she wasn't playing defense. She was letting the story write itself, one careless act at a time. By Thursday, Dylan had become louder. Not funnier, not smarter, just louder. He cracked jokes that didn't land, slapped the backs of friends who didn't laugh as easily, tried to reclaim a rhythm that had quietly slipped away from him. Every time he walked past Naomi, he made sure to say something, sarcastic, biting, juvenile. But it wasn't working. She never looked shaken. She never rushed to respond. And that silence, again, was beginning to echo louder than his voice. It wasn't just that Naomi didn't react. It was how she held herself when others did. When someone made a rude comment, she didn't flinch. When someone pushed their shoulder into hers in the hallway, she didn't stumble. She would pause, let the moment pass, then keep walking with the same posture, the same calm. Dylan's frustration grew, not because Naomi fought back, but because she didn't. She refused to give him the conflict he needed to feel powerful. Instead, she delivered something far more unsettling. Truth, wrapped in quiet. In history class, when Dylan tried to catch her off guard by muttering a crude joke under his breath, Naomi turned to him slowly and said, "I hope you realize how much of yourself you give away when you talk like that." Then, she turned back to her book. Jerome Fields, 74, once said the most painful thing a man can face isn't being yelled at. It's being seen. When someone looks at you and tells the truth without raising their voice, it hits different. It lands where your ego hides. Naomi wasn't lecturing Dylan. She wasn't trying to shame him in front of the class, but in her refusal to let his actions define her, she'd begun to redefine him instead. Students started to notice. Not with applause, not with protests, but with silence. The kind that meant, "We're not with you anymore." During lunch, Dylan bumped into her again. This time not by accident. His tray tilted just enough to splash orange juice onto her sleeve. She looked down, then up. "You keep stepping closer," she said softly, "but I'm not the one slipping." That line didn't spark laughter. It sparked stillness. Even Dylan's closest friend let out a nervous breath. The room shifted again. Naomi sat down, wiped her sleeve with a napkin, and opened her sandwich. She didn't look around. She didn't seek validation. Her calm wasn't for show. It was armor, earned, not borrowed. By the time lunch ended, Dylan looked more tired than triumphant. His jokes had no weight. His steps had no rhythm. He was still speaking, but no one was really listening. Naomi hadn't raised her voice once. And yet, with every quiet reply, she'd carved something deeper than noise. She was letting the fire burn itself out, one spark at a time. Friday afternoon, the sun hung low against the windows, casting long shadows across the school courtyard. The bell had rung 15 minutes ago, but Dylan stayed behind, pacing near the side entrance, waiting. Not for his friends. They had started drifting away. Not for attention. He wasn't getting much of that anymore. He was waiting for her. When Naomi finally stepped outside, she didn't seem surprised to see him there. She stopped a few feet away, set her bag down slowly, and waited. No fear, no anger, just stillness. Dylan's voice cracked slightly when he spoke. "Why aren't you fighting back?" It wasn't a taunt, it was something else. A question he didn't want to ask but couldn't hold in. You think staying quiet makes you better than me? Naomi looked at him, long enough to make the silence uncomfortable. Then she answered, with a calm that made every word feel heavier. I'm not trying to be better than you, Dylan. I'm just not trying to be you. He scoffed, glanced at the ground. You think I care what people say? They've always had something to say. She nodded once. Maybe, but now they're listening for the first time, and you're the one talking. He shifted his weight, suddenly aware of how loud his sneakers sounded on the concrete. You've got everyone fooled. They think you're so strong, so untouchable. Naomi shook her head. No, they just finally see who's in control of themselves and who's not. Linda Thompson, now 70, said moments like that don't scream. They settle into the room like a weight no one wants to carry. She didn't attack him, she reflected him, and sometimes that's the most devastating mirror a person can face. Dylan didn't reply. Not at first. He stared at the ground, then at Naomi, searching for something to throw back. Sarcasm, insult, anything. But none of it came. Just a tight jaw, a clenched fist, and the absence of confidence he used to wear like armor. Naomi picked up her bag. I'm not afraid of you, Dylan. I just don't need you to see me for me to exist. Then she walked away. No dramatic turn, no glance over the shoulder. He stood there long after she was gone, the courtyard emptying around him, and in that silence, he began to understand something he never had to before. Power doesn't always leave a bruise. Sometimes it just leaves you standing still, exposed, with nothing left to say. That afternoon, the boy who once owned the hallway learned what it felt like to lose not by force, but by contrast. Monday morning arrived with a strange kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with tension just beneath the surface. Something had shifted over the weekend, though no one said it aloud. It was there in the way students huddled tighter around their phones, in the way teachers looked longer than usual at certain kids in the hall, and most of all in the way Dylan Hayes walked into school, jaw set, steps fast, eyes darting. When he reached his locker, he froze. It was covered, every inch of it, top to bottom, side to side, plastered with printed screenshots. Dozens of them. Text messages, social DMs. His name at the top of each thread. His words in black and white. No edits, no context needed. Racist slurs, misogynistic comments, insults meant to stay private now broadcast on full display. The hallway didn't burst into laughter. It didn't gasp. It simply stood still. Some turned away. Some took pictures. Others whispered, "Did you see that?" But most just stared. Because they already knew who had written those things. This wasn't new information. It was just undeniable now. Dylan reached forward to rip one of the pages off, but his hand stopped midair. The paper barely moved in the breeze from the AC. His own words stared back at him. Ugly, crude, and familiar. Mr. Thomas Reed, 65, a retired high school teacher, later said, "That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need to knock, it just waits. And when the door opens, it walks in." Someone behind him cleared their throat. Dylan turned. It wasn't Naomi. It was just another student, expression unreadable, walking past without a word. He spent the rest of the morning trying to act normal, but it didn't stick. People weren't mocking him. They were avoiding him, like the room had changed and he hadn't noticed, like the current had shifted, and he was the one being carried now, not leading it. In chemistry class, Naomi sat 3 rows back. She didn't look at him once. She didn't have to. Everyone else did. Maria Alvarez, who once worked in an ER flooded with chaos, said, "Sometimes justice doesn't arrive on a gurney. It walks in quiet, unarmed, but with the kind of weight that makes people sit up straight." By lunch, most of the screenshots had been removed, but not before they'd been seen, saved, and shared. Dylan knew that. He wasn't dumb. He just hadn't realized how far the reach of his own words could stretch when pulled into the light. The worst part wasn't the exposure, it was the stillness that followed. The knowledge that he had no defense, no spin, no audience waiting to cheer. Because once people saw who he really was, they stopped looking up. After school, Dylan waited by the east stairwell, away from the main entrance where foot traffic was thinner, where fewer eyes would be watching. He wasn't sure if Naomi would pass by that way. He wasn't even sure what he planned to say if she did. But he waited. When she appeared at the top of the stairs, her steps were measured, her gaze steady. She saw him. She didn't turn back. She didn't hesitate. She just kept walking until they stood a few feet apart. Dylan spoke first, his voice low and unsteady. "It was you, wasn't it?" Naomi didn't answer. He took a step forward. "You put those messages up. You wanted to ruin me." She looked at him, not with anger, not with triumph, just clarity. "You ruined yourself. I just stopped covering for you." He opened his mouth to fire back, but no words came. Everything he wanted to say crumbled before it could reach his lips, because deep down, he knew she hadn't written those messages. He had, and the only person responsible for the fallout was the one standing in his own shoes. Naomi tilted her head slightly. "You spent weeks trying to make people look at me. Now they're finally looking at you." Dylan's fists clenched at his sides. "You think this makes you the hero?" Naomi shook her head. "No, I'm not interested in being the hero. I just want the noise to stop." Darlene Moore, 66, once said, "There's nothing more disarming than someone who doesn't need to win, because it means they've already made peace, with themselves, with the truth, with the outcome." The silence between them stretched. Not awkward, not tense, just final. Naomi turned to leave, but before she did, she looked back once and said, "Now everyone sees who you really are." Then she walked away. No hurry in her step, no weight on her shoulders. Dylan stayed where he was, alone, surrounded by an emptiness that wasn't about being abandoned, it was about being revealed. And when he finally walked out of that stairwell, he didn't go looking for anyone. He just kept his head down, hoping, maybe too late, that fewer people were still watching. But the truth, once seen, doesn't go back into hiding. The Charger pulled up to the school curb just as the afternoon light began to soften. Naomi didn't rush. She stepped in quietly, closed the door behind her, and placed her bag on her lap. Marcus didn't say anything at first. He just looked over, eyes steady, hands resting on the wheel. After a moment he asked, "You okay?" Naomi nodded. "Yeah, I am now." They sat in that stillness for a few seconds, the engine purring beneath them, the world outside muffled by the closed doors. There was no need to explain what had happened. Marcus had seen the screenshots. He'd heard whispers. But more than that, he'd seen the way his daughter walked, each day more grounded, more sure. "I'm proud of you," he said finally, voice low but certain. Naomi looked out the window. A group of students was crossing the parking lot, some laughing, some quiet. But none of them looked her way. Not because they didn't see her, because they did, now more than ever. They just didn't know how to fit her into the old categories anymore. She had stepped into the spotlight without raising her voice. She had held her ground without throwing a punch. And when the moment came to strike back, she chose truth. Not vengeance, not spectacle, just truth. Raymond Ellis, 71, once said, "The strongest ones aren't the loudest. They're the ones who wait, who listen, who let the weight of silence do the work. And when they speak, it's already too late for the other side to hide." As the Charger pulled away from the school, Naomi rested her head lightly against the seat. She didn't feel victorious. She felt whole. For the first time, what she knew to be true about herself didn't need to be proven to anyone else. She had won, but not by being bigger, louder, or meaner. She won by being still. By being clear. By letting the truth catch up to the noise and swallow it whole. Power built on fear had collapsed. And in its place, something stronger had quietly taken root. If you've ever been misjudged just because of how you looked or how quietly you carried yourself, remember this. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be spoken, at the right time, by the right voice. Type 1 if you've ever felt powerless in the face of abuse. Type 2 if you still believe decency can win. And if this story stayed with you, hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful true stories that don't just entertain, but remind us what still matters.